Hey, and welcome back to Curious Minds. I'm Martin, and it's awesome to have you all tuning in again today.
And I'm Eliza. Thank you so much for joining us. We had such a blast talking about Bitcoin and AI in our first episode, and we're just as excited, if not more, for what we're diving into today.
Absolutely. I'm buzzing with excitement for what we've got in store. This might be our most eclectic journey yet, but that's what Curious Minds is all about, right?
Totally. We're going to be jumping between the stars, our own memories, and, well, a whole hidden world right under our feet.
Exactly. We're starting by asking one of humanity's biggest questions. Are we alone? We'll be diving into the quest for life beyond Earth, looking at exoplanets, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and the sheer wonder of the possibility of life out there.
From the vastness of space, we'll then turn inward, exploring the surprisingly complex world of nostalgia. Why do we long for the past? What does it do to our brains? And how is it used, and sometimes used against us, in the world around us?
And finally, we'll be venturing into a realm most of us rarely think about, the secret lives of fungi. Prepare to be amazed. They're not just mushrooms, they're essential to life on Earth in ways you can't even imagine.
So, get ready to have your mind blown, your perspective shifted, and maybe even feel a little bit nostalgic for things you didn't even know existed. Let's get curious. Today, we're tackling, well, maybe the biggest question out there. Are we alone?
It's definitely up there. A question humans have asked forever, really.
Right. And for so long, it was just philosophy speculation. But now it's turned into this rigorous scientific hunt. We're talking astrobiology, exoplanets, SETI.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting. We've moved from just wondering to actively searching. The technology we have now to find planets around other stars is just incredible.
It really does feel like a different era, almost a revolution in finding these exoplanets. What's really driven this recent explosion in discoveries? Is it mostly Kepler?
Kepler was huge, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's a methods, too. The biggest one, the transit method, that's given us, what, over 75% of the planets we found?
That's the dimming light thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. You watch a star, wait for a tiny, tiny dip in its brightness as a planet crosses in front. Simple concept, technically very hard.
In the other ways, like taking actual pictures.
Direct imaging, much tougher. Stars are just so incredibly bright, trying to spot a dim planet right next to one is challenging. We use special tools, coronagraphs, to block the starlight.
Ah, okay.
But yeah, fewer than 100 planets found that way so far.
Yeah.
And you have to realize our methods, they have biases. We tend to find the big ones, the hot Jupiters, close to their stars because they cause a bigger dip or are easier to separate visually.
Okay, so we're finding planets. But the big question is habitability. We always hear about the Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold.
Right, the zone where liquid water could exist on the surface. It's fundamental, definitely. But it's more complicated than just distance.
How so?
Well, you need a rocky planet, probably. You need a stable atmosphere. And the star itself matters a lot. Some scientists are looking at K-dwarfs, orange dwarfs.
By them.
Because they're incredibly stable. They burn steadily for maybe tens of billions of years. That's a huge amount of time for life to potentially evolve, much longer than stars like our sun offer. Some call them superior Goldilocks stars.
Yeah, interesting. And what about systems like TRAPPIST-1? That got a lot of attention.
Oh, definitely. 7 Earth-sized planets around a small, cool M-dwarf star. Several of them are in the habitable zone. Now, M-dwarfs have their own issues, like powerful flares.
Right, bursts of radiation, not exactly welcoming.
Potentially not, yeah. But TRAPPIST-1 shows these zones can exist even in challenging systems. It really broadens the possibilities.
We found some specific candidates that seem promising, like Kepler 186.
Yes, that was a landmark. The first confirmed Earth-sized planet smack in the middle of its star's habitable zone. It told us, okay, these worlds are really out there.
And Kepler 22b.
Another key early find. A bit bigger than Earth, super Earth maybe, but a really good candidate. And it's a target for JWST to study its atmosphere.
JWST, the Webb telescope. We'll get back to that. And then there's our closest neighbor.
Proxima Centauri b, just 4 light years away. Having a potentially habitable world practically on our doorstep. That's huge for future study. Maybe even someday probes.
So, planets seem common. Maybe even habitable ones. Which makes you wonder, why the silence? This brings us to SETI.
The search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Wow.
Kicked off formally back in 1960 with Project Ozma.
And how does SETI actually search?
Mostly by listening. Radio SETI scans specific frequencies, especially the water hole, a quiet part of the radio spectrum between hydrogen and hydroxyl emissions. The idea is it's a logical place for communication.
Like a cosmic dial tone spot.
Sort of, yeah. And there's optical SETI, too, looking for powerful, short bursts of laser light, basically signals that look artificial, not natural.
Beyond signals, you mentioned technosignatures. What does that involve?
It's looking for any evidence of technology, not just messages. Things like maybe industrial pollution in an atmosphere, like CFCs, things that shouldn't be there naturally.
Wow.
Or waste heat. Advanced civilizations might give off detectable infrared signatures. Or even hypothetical megastructures like Dyson spheres, built around stars to capture energy. Wild ideas, but we're looking.
And after all this searching, what have we found?
Well, that's the kicker. Despite decades, lots of projects. Nothing confirmed, zero verifiable signals from ET.
Not even the wow signal.
The famous wow signal from '77. Very intriguing, a strong narrowband signal. But the problem is it was never detected again, despite many attempts. Without repeatability, you can't confirm it was, alien. It's still unexplained.
So this lack of contact, despite the odds, that leads to things like the Drake equation and the Fermi paradox, right?
Exactly. The Drake equation isn't really for getting a precise number. It's more a framework. It helps us think about all the factors: star formation, planets, life arising, intelligence, technology, lifespan.
And when you plug in even conservative numbers now...
Updated versions suggest the chances of us being the first technological civilization ever in our galaxy or even the observable universe are actually astonishingly low.
Which makes the silence even louder.
Precisely. That's the Fermi paradox, famously put as, where is everybody? If life and intelligence should be common based on numbers, why haven't we seen any evidence? No probes, no signals, nothing.
What are some of the proposed answers?
There are many. Maybe there's a great filter, some incredibly hard step that life struggles to pass. Maybe we've passed it, maybe it's ahead of us, like surviving our own technology.
That's a sobering thought.
Or maybe civilizations just don't last long. They self-destruct or run out of resources. Or perhaps interstellar communication or travel is just fundamentally harder than we imagine. The distances are just immense.
So where do we go from here? How does the search continue? You mentioned JWST.
Oh, JWST is a game changer. It can analyze the atmospheres of exoplanets like never before, looking for water vapor, methane, CO2, potential biosignatures.
Gases that might indicate life.
Exactly. And there's the upcoming Nancy Grace Roman telescope, too. It'll use microlensing to find more distant planets and also push direct imaging further. Plus, AI and machine learning are crucial now for sifting through all the data these telescopes produce.
And it's not just distant stars, right? We're looking closer to home, too.
Absolutely. Missions like Europa Clipper, going to Jupiter's moon Europa, and JUICE, exploring Ganymede and Callisto, they're looking for subsurface oceans on these icy moons.
Oceans hidden under ice?
Yeah, vast liquid water oceans. And where there's liquid water, energy, and nutrients, there's at least a possibility of life, even if it's microbial.
With all this searching, especially for intelligence, there must be ethical thoughts. What if we do find something?
There's been a lot of thought put into that, thankfully. There are established protocols. First, rigorous verification. You have to be absolutely sure.
Can't jump the gun.
Definitely not. Then there needs to be international agreement before any public announcement. And critically, a non-response protocol.
Meaning, we don't reply.
Not without broad international consultation and agreement, likely through a body like the UN. We wouldn't just send a message back on our own. It's a decision for all of humanity. And then you get into deeper questions. What if it's not biological life? What if it's AI? Our whole ethical framework is pretty human-centric right now.
That really opens up a lot to think about. So wrapping this up, this whole quest from ancient philosophy to cutting-edge telescopes, it's one of humanity's biggest undertakings.
It really is. Pushing technology, fostering global science collaboration. But more than that, I think it's fundamentally a journey of self-discovery. Learning about potential life out there teaches us so much about life here and our own context in the universe.
It forces us to look at ourselves, our planet, our future in a different light.
Absolutely. The search continues, the silence persists for now, but the questions drive us forward.
So for you listening, considering everything we've talked about, the sheer number of potential worlds, the deep cosmic silence, the possibility of a signal tomorrow, what do you think this ongoing search ultimately tells us about our own future and our unique, maybe fleeting place in the cosmos?
Okay, so based on what you've told us, today we're really going to get into an emotion we all experience but maybe don't fully grasp, nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
We'll unpack the psychology behind it, which is pretty complex, and then look at how brands are, well, quite strategically using it.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how our whole view of nostalgia has just completely flipped over time. I mean, think about this. Back in 1688, you had this Swiss doctor, Johannes Hofer.
Right.
He actually coined the term, and he called it a neurological illness, a cerebral disease even.
An illness.
Well,
Seriously.
seriously. For centuries, people even called it immigrant psychosis.
Wow. That's kind of wild, isn't it? To go from like a mental disorder to how we see it now, which is, well, mostly positive, right? A psychological resource, not just missing home.
Exactly. It's much more than homesickness.
So what was the big shift? How did we get here? And more importantly, why should you care? We'll look at the triggers, that sort of bittersweet feeling it has, the benefits, and yeah, how it makes you buy things.
Well, connecting it all, that bittersweet thing is key. It's, partly pleasant, partly a little sad.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually makes it feel more real, more profound. It's not about escaping a reality. It's finding comfort in it.
Okay, this is where I find it gets really interesting. The triggers. Like, for you listening, what does it? A smell? A song?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's the smell of crayons. Takes me straight back to kindergarten. Even though, honestly, I wasn't always loving kindergarten.
No, right. But here's the thing. Your brain does. It's not exactly giving you the historical facts.
No.
Those nostalgic memories, they're usually skewed positive. It's called rosy retrospection.
Rosy retrospection.
The brain kind of smooths over the bad parts, creates that warm glow. It wants the emotional comfort more than the, objective truth.
So why? Why does the brain bother doing that filtering?
Well, because nostalgia has these, you could almost call them psychological superpowers. It helps with emotional stability, comfort when things are tough.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it reinforces who you are, your identity, strengthens your connections with people, that feeling of belonging.
Right. But I read something that seemed counterintuitive. How can looking back actually push you forward, make you optimistic?
Yeah, it's paradoxical, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But it really does. It can boost optimism, inspire you for the future, make you feel more motivated.
Huh. Okay.
So you can see why brands are all over this. It's not just fluffy sentiment. It builds real emotional ties.
And drives purchases. People actually pay more for nostalgic stuff.
They do, and it builds that all-important brand loyalty.
You definitely see it everywhere. This whole rewind culture, vinyl records are back, classic video games, vintage clothes. It feels like there's a real hunger for that retro vibe.
Oh, totally. Brands are definitely cashing in, like Nintendo bringing back the NES Classic.
Yeah, or Crystal Pepsi coming back, or those like 90s igloo coolers.
Exactly, and think about pop culture tie-ins. Microsoft's Child of the 90s ad with the Tamagotchi.
Right, I remember that.
Or all the hype around the Barbie movie, or how Stranger Things made everyone want Levi's again.
And music. Music's got to be one of the biggest triggers, right?
Huge. Absolutely huge. A song hits, and bam, instant emotional connection. You're right back there.
But it's not always smooth sailing for brands, is it? They can get it wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Campaigns can feel really fake or just irrelevant if they don't have a real link to the time they're referencing. There's this relevance paradox. Meaning it has to feel relevant now, not just like a history lesson. You need that mix of old and new.
And what if the product itself doesn't quite match the memory? Like you buy the re-release and it's just not as good as you remembered? That could backfire.
Big time. That disappointment is real. They can actually hurt the brand. So yeah, it's a fine line. Brands really need to be careful. You can't just exploit emotions, especially during stressful times. Or, romanticize the past and ignore the downsides.
Or leave people out who don't share those specific warm and fuzzy memories.
Exactly. It's got to be authentic, genuine connection, not manipulation.
So, wrapping this up for you listening, nostalgia is, it's powerful, both for us personally and as a tool for brands. Success seems to hinge on really knowing the audience, getting that balance between past and present right, and just being authentic about it.
Yeah, definitely. And looking forward. Here's something to think about. What happens when AI gets involved?
AI and nostalgia. How?
Imagine AI tailoring ads or content specifically to trigger your personal nostalgic feelings based on your data.
Whoa, okay.
Right. What does that mean for how we experience our own memories or how brands interact with us? It opens up some pretty big ethical questions about privacy and emotional manipulation.
Peeling back the layers, on a world that's mostly hidden right under our feet.
Mm-hmm.
It's this incredibly complex kingdom, sometimes called nature's internet or the wood wide web. We're talking about fungi.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to really get into what makes fungi so unique, their vital roles, and their maybe surprising impact, especially the part science is still figuring out.
And it's key to remember, fungi are a whole separate kingdom, not plants, not animals. This distinction is fundamental. It lets them do things no other life form really can. They're completely essential.
Okay, so before we get into how they, shape everything, let's cover the basics. What are fungi, fundamentally?
Right. So they're eukaryotic. Their cells have a nucleus, like ours, but crucially, they're heterotrophic. They don't make their own food like plants.
They eat other things.
Sort of, but they digest externally. They secrete these powerful enzymes outside their bodies, break down food, and then absorb the nutrients.
Oh.
And their structure is usually these long, thread-like things called hyphae. These weave together into a big network, often hidden, called a mycelium.
That's the main body, then.
For most, yes. Though you have yeasts, which are just single cells. That's the main exception people know.
Gotcha. And the sheer number of different types,
Yeah.
it's mind-boggling, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's staggering. Estimates range from maybe 2.2 up to nearly 4 million species.
Wow.
And the incredible part, we've formally described less than 7% of them. Think about that knowledge gap. There could be, new medicines, new materials just waiting.
It's that hidden mycelium network that really sparks the nature's internet comparison, right?
Ah.
Let's dive into that a bit more. The wood wide web.
Exactly. The mycelium is the functional body for most fungi, working away underground or inside wood. The hyphae act like tiny transport routes, miniature highways.
Transporting what?
Nutrients, mainly. But in mycorrhizal networks, that's where fungi team up with plant roots. These networks connect different plants, even different trees. And through these connections, things like water, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus can actually move between plants.
Which leads to these really cool, almost story-like ideas.
Mm.
You hear about mother trees feeding saplings or warnings about pests spreading through the network.
Yeah, and those ideas are really captivating. The nutrient exchange part, that's solid, very well documented. Plants and fungi swapping resources, a clear mutual benefit.
But the communication part.
That's where it gets debated. The idea of conscious, altruistic communication or trees making sacrifices, well, the scientific evidence for that specific interpretation is still being heavily debated.
Right. Extraordinary claims.
Require extraordinary evidence. Exactly. We need to be careful not to, project human behaviors onto nature. It's easy to do, but good science means testing those assumptions rigorously. Is it targeted help? Or just efficient resource flow in a shared network? That's the ongoing question.
That's a great point about how science actually works, always questioning. So zooming out, what's the big picture impact of all this fungal activity on, say, the planet's health?
Oh, it's huge. Fungi are nature's primary decomposers, the ultimate recyclers. They break down really tough organic stuff like lignin and wood, which most other things can't handle.
Making nutrients available again.
Precisely. And think carbon cycle. Fungal networks globally are estimated to lock away something like 5 billion tons of CO2 equivalent each year.
5 billion. That's massive.
It's roughly the annual emissions of the entire United States. They also literally hold soil together, improve water retention, help plants cope with stress, which is why things like heavy tilling or overusing fungicides can be so damaging they disrupt this foundational layer.
Okay, let's bring it closer to home. Our relationship with fungi, it's pretty complex.
It really is. I mean, think about food. Yeast for bread and beer, molds for cheese, even new foods from fermented waste. It's indispensable.
And medicine, obviously. Penicillin is the classic.
The classic, yeah. But also cholesterol drugs like lovastatin, even anti-cancer drugs like Taxol originally came from fungi. And now we're seeing mycelium used for building materials, packaging, fabrics. It's really innovative.
Using the fungus itself as a material.
Yeah, or using their enzymes as green alternatives in industry. And then there's bioremediation.
Right, you mentioned that cleaning up pollution.
Exactly. Some fungi, like white rot types, can actually break down really nasty stuff. Plastics, oil spills, even some pharmaceuticals and wastewater. It's pretty amazing potential.
But it's not all positive, is it? There's a flip side.
Definitely. Fungi are also major pathogens. They cause diseases in humans, devastating diseases in crops, and some produce potent toxins, so they're allies, but also adversaries. It's a duality we live with.
So wrapping this up, fungi are this distinct, incredibly vital kingdom, mostly hidden. doing essential work everywhere, from deep soil to our own bodies and industries.
A complex relationship, for sure, both beneficial and challenging, and we're still learning so much.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What does understanding this hidden world truly mean for how we manage ecosystems, how we think about sustainability, maybe even how we define life itself? Something to ponder until our next deep dive.
And that's our deep dive for today, fellow curious minds. From the vast unknowns of space to the tiny wonders beneath our feet, what a journey it's been, Martin.
Absolutely, Eliza. We love exploring these fascinating corners of the world with you, and we truly hope you've enjoyed stretching your brain with us today.
If you had as much fun listening as we did talking, please make sure you're subscribed wherever you're enjoying our podcast.
And exciting news! You can now also find Curious Minds on YouTube. If you're watching us there, hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of our video episodes. Plus, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.
Your engagement truly helps new curious listeners find us and join our growing community.
So, from me, Martin,
and from me, Eliza, thank you so much for tuning in.
we've loved having you along for the ride, and we can't wait to share even more with you next time.
Until then,
Keep asking questions
keep exploring.
and stay wonderfully curious.